Hi, this is Jeff Schoenbauer, and this video is about how I built a high-quality take-apart canoe that we can take along on our travels across North America. Over the years, we've become pretty accustomed to having a high-quality canoe, and we've had very good luck with the Mad River Explorer over the years in various settings and wilderness experiences. So we were fortunate to find a Kevlar Mad River Explorer canoe that was available on Craigslist, so we went ahead and bought it and used that as the starting point for creating our take-apart canoe. I also built a custom canoe cart to go along with the take-apart canoe, and it works very well in shuttling the canoe from our vehicle down to a river or lake. Our full setup for traveling around North America allows us to take our take-apart canoe, our bikes, solo canoe, as well as a custom-built fishing boat along on our travels. The custom-built bike rack and platform for the canoe is all one unit, and it's bolted to the flanges of the receiver hitch, which is the part that bolts to the frame of the RV, and that allowed me for good lateral stability, as well as allowing for the receiver hitch to still be available to hook up the boat. The finished take-apart canoe consists of two watertight halves, each with a half-inch marine plywood bulkhead that's fiberglassed and epoxied into the original structure of the canoe. The first step in the process was to remove the carrying yoke, which was exactly at the center point of the canoe, and that's where the bulkhead location would be established. After removing the yoke, I used a piece of angle iron and just screwed that into the gunnels to make sure that I had kept the gunnels very stiff while I was doing the fabrication process. I also then just created a pattern for the two bulkheads using a stiff piece of paper that I traced inside as shown and ultimately cut and used for the pattern to shape the bulkheads. Next step was to roughen the inside of the canoe, the fiberglass, using a orbital sander, and I wanted to scuff that up so that the fiberglass and epoxy fillets would adhere as strongly as possible to the existing fiberglass or Kevlar material. Then, as the image shows, I positioned the first bulkhead, squared it up and everything, which allowed me then to mark where I wanted my cut line. Importantly, once I made the cut line, or the cut, I made sure that I left the gunnels intact, and I also left a little 1-inch piece on the bottom intact so that the canoe, two halves of the canoe would remain solidly together before I cut them completely apart, to make sure that I got the two bulkheads in perfect position. I used an air saw to make the cut, which worked great. With the cut completed, then I positioned the first bulkhead perfectly straight and went ahead and epoxied that in with epoxy fillets and let that dry overnight. So the first bulkhead now is in perfect position prior to making the final cuts in the gunnel and the bottom of the canoe with the air saw. So I wanted to make sure both the first bulkhead as well as the second bulkhead were in perfect position before I actually made the final cut and separated the two halves from each other. Also note that the Plywood is 1/2 inch, British standard, marine grade, very high quality. It's expensive, but it's definitely worth it over anything you'd get at your home improvement store. My next step was to place the second bulkhead directly up against the first bulkhead and clamp it into place and fillet that to the Canoe fiberglass as well. Once that second bulkhead had dried in place, I went ahead and created stiffeners, the middle stiffeners there, those boxes, to help stiffen the bulkhead. Probably a little overbuilt, but didn't really know how far I needed to go with that. And then I also used then fiberglass to make sure that on either side the bulkhead was fiberglassed in to the Canoe itself, creating a mechanical connection versus a chemical connection. And because it's a mechanical connection, the width of the fiberglass that attaches to the inside of the Canoe should be at least 4 inches. And again, I used a high quality marine grade fiberglass and epoxy for this purpose. And once that was all into place, then I was able to go ahead and finish my cut through the gunnel as well as the bottom of the Canoe, and essentially I created the two-part Canoe with the bulkheads in perfect alignment before I made those cuts, and they were secured in place and ready for finishing, hole drilling, and so forth. Once I had the two Canoe halves separated, I used additional epoxy fillet material to fill in any gaps between the bulkhead and the Canoe surface or the Canoe fiberglass to make sure that there wasn't any gaps in there and that I had it all smoothed out. I did not use any fiberglass on the outside. Once the main fiberglassing and epoxy work was completed, I finished covering both of the bulkheads with an epoxy mixture so that it would be waterproof and wouldn't absorb any water. And then I covered that all with a spar varnish for UV protection, since fiberglass and epoxy is more susceptible to UV rays than a spar varnish was. As you can also see, I added some metal aluminum connectors and drilled holes through the gunnels and so forth in the bulkhead as a backup to the mechanical connection backup to the fiberglassing in case I ever hit a major rock or something and it dislodged the fiberglass for some reason. I'd still have a mechanical connection that held it all together. And then as you can see, I have shown here 3 quick bolts. I added a 4th one above the middle one just for a little extra stability. And as you can also see, I do not have the gunnel plates in place at this point yet, which I will show in upcoming here. Those proved to be quite important to give me the final stability I was looking for and rigidity along the gunnel line. A little addition on the mechanical connecting pieces there, those aluminum pieces. A couple of them are up by the gunnel where it attaches the gunnel to the bulkhead, and the other 2 are down in the box that attach the box to the hull itself. And basically the idea there is to back up the fiberglass and fillet connection to the hull with a mechanical connection to give me extra security. This picture shows more clearly the stiffener plate that I added to the gunnels to give it the whole gunnel and the whole boat structure rigidity that I was looking for. And between that and the bulkheads, it's actually more rigid and probably stronger than the original Canoe in many ways. But those plates were really quite important to give it that final rigidity I was looking for. And here's the final take-apart Canoe. Goes together in 5, maybe 10 minutes. And we've been very satisfied with how it's worked out and look forward to many years of use in waters of all types across North America.